The Challengathi arena of Valor Prime shook with the sound of drums. Thousands of alien nobles filled the stone seats, their voices rising like thunder. The air smelled of dust, blood, and burning torches. At the center stood the champion of Lady Zyre, her greatest warrior. He was a giant, armored in black steel, his cleaver long as a horse. The crowd roared his name, believing no force could ever bring him down. From the far gate walked the challenger, a man, a human, plain in clothing, no armor, no shining weapon. The crowd laughed at the sight, some pointing, some spitting. A weak off-worlder against the pride of Lady Zyre. It seemed like a cruel joke, a fight already won before it began. But the human's eyes told a different story. Cold, sharp, and calm, they carried no fear. He walked slowly, each step steady on the dust. He did not bow to the crowd. He did not look at Lady Zyre. He looked only at the champion. The champion roared, lifting his cleaver high. The drums beat louder. The dust swirled. The duel had begun, and the fate of one house hung in the balance. The impossible strike champion charged forward like a storm. Each step cracked the stone beneath his feet. His cleaver swung down with the weight of a falling mountain. The air itself screamed as the blade tore through it. The crowd leaned forward, ready to see blood, ready to see the human split in half. But the human moved. His body blurred faster than sight. The next moment, a sound cut the air, sharp and final. The champion froze, his body stiff. A line of blood appeared from shoulder to hip. Then, with a crash like thunder, his body split apart, to halves falling to the dust. The arena fell silent. No laughter, no cheers, only shock. Lady Zyre's eyes widened in horror, her lips trembling. Her champion, her pride, her shield dented in a single strike. The nobles gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The human stood tall, his blade gleaming with blood. No smile, no roar, only silence in his eyes. He looked at Lady Zyre in the stance, and for the first time, she felt fear. The ancient Loth overseer of the arena rose with trembling hands. His voice echoed through the stone walls. By the law of conquest, the household of the defeated belongs to the victor. The crowd erupted in cries, half in anger, half in awe. But the law was unbreakable, older than the empire itself. Lady Zyre felt her heart burn with rage. Her pride screamed for her to deny it, but she knew the law's weight. If she refused, her entire house would be slaughtered. Her maids lowered their heads in shame, knowing they too were bound. Even her guards dared not look her in the eye. They now served the human. The human did not gloat. He gave only a single nod, his silence heavier than chains. The overseer turned to Lady Zyre. "Nil," he said. The crowd went silent again, waiting. Every eye burned into her as she trembled. Her heart screamed no, but the law left no choice. Slowly, painfully, she bent her knees. The dust of the arena stained her jeweled ropes. Her pride cracked like glass. The once proud noble now bowed to the human. The drum stopped. The air was heavy. The human turned and walked away. His steps, come, behind him. Lady Zyre and her maids followed, their heads lowered. The arena roared in disbelief. The story of the human had just begun. Pride-broken Lady Zyre sat in her palace chamber, her body heavy with shame. The golden throne beneath her felt like cold stone. The banners of her house still hung high, but they no longer carried pride. She had been the mistress of power, feared across her world. Now, by the ancient law, she was nothing more than a concubine to a human. Her heart raged, but her hands trembled when she thought of him. Her maids stood around her, whispering quietly. Some of them spoke with fear, saying the human was like a demon. Others whispered with curiosity, wondering what kind of man could kill her champion in one strike. They remembered the sound of the blade, the speed, the silence that followed. The arena had been filled with nobles, yet all of them had seen the same truth. The human was not just strong, he was something beyond their understanding. Lady Zyre clenched her fists until her nails cut into her palms. She wanted to scream, to curse, to strike him down. But the law was clear. The overseer had spoken, and no one could break the law. If she resisted, her entire household would be destroyed. Her champion was gone, his blood still burning in her memory. The weight of failure crushed her pride like a mountain pressing on her chest. The human walked through her halls without fear. He looked at the tall alien statues, the golden walls, the guards who now served him by law. But he showed no greed. He demanded no treasure. He spoke only when needed, his voice calm and firm. The servants bowed to him if he had always been their master. Lady Zyra watched with burning eyes. She could not understand why he showed no arrogance. If he had mocked her, if he had laughed at her weakness, she could have hated him more easily. But his silence was worse. His silence was heavier than chains. One evening, Lady Zyra's chief maid spoke softly. "My lady, perhaps he is not like the others," she said. "He could have taken everything, yet he has only taken what the law demands." Lady Zyra turned on her with fire in her voice. "Silence. Do not speak of him with respect." But deep inside, her heart trembled, because a small part of her had begun to wonder the same thing. She remembered the moment in the arena when his eyes had met hers. They were not the eyes of a savage. They were not filled with cruelty or hunger. They were calm, steady, like the eyes of a man who had seen 1,000 battles and carried them inside. That look haunted her. It followed her into her dreams. It burned away her pride every time she tried to cling to it. Her maids grew restless, some of them whispering that the human might be a better master than the nobles they once feared. Others prayed to the old gods, begging to be freed from this strange fate. But no matter what they whispered, they all felt the same truth. The human was not a man to be ignored. He was a storm, and storms could not be resisted. Lady Zyra sat alone at night, staring into the fire. She promised herself she would never bow in spirit. But deep inside her heart, cracks were already forming. Her pride was broken, and something new was being built in its place. She did not yet know if it was hate, respect, or something far more dangerous. All she knew was that her life no longer belonged to herself, and that thought frightened her more than death. The human secret palace of Lady Zyra grew quiet in the days after the duel. The human moved through its halls like a shadow, calm and without fear. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply existed with a weight that bent the air around him. The alien servants who once laughed at humans now lowered their heads when he passed. Even the guards avoided his gaze, as if his eyes alone carried the memory of death. Lady Zyra could not rest. Each night she tossed on her bed of silk, her mind replaying the moment of her champion's fall. One strike, one instant, and the strongest warrior of her house had been cut in half. It was impossible, yet it had happened before her own eyes. Her pride wanted to say it was a trick, a hidden poison, or some cursed weapon. But deep inside she knew it was not a trick. It was something far worse. It was skill, pure and absolute. And that truth gnawed at her pride like fire eating wood. At last, one evening, she stepped into the hall where the human sat. He sat not on her throne, but on a plain chair, sharpening a small blade with calm hands. The firelight flickered across his face, showing scars that ran like lines of history. She stood tall, forcing herself not to tremble. "Who are you, human?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "What are you really?" The human lifted his eyes, steady and calm. "I am a soldier," he said, nothing more. But there was more in his voice than his words. It was the voice of a man who had seen things no one else could imagine. Lady Zyra pressed further, anger burning in her tone. "No soldier moves like you. No soldier kills my champion with one strike. Tell me the truth." The human's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in memory. "I have fought across the stars," he said slowly. "I have fought beasts taller than mountains, creatures that breathe fire and shadows. I have fought machines built to kill worlds, and I have fought armies that swallowed suns." His voice did not rise. He did not boast. He simply told it as if it were fact, as if it were nothing more than the truth. Lady Zyra felt her chest tighten. Her maids, who stood nearby, covered their mouths, their eyes wide with fear and awe. One of them whispered, "No alien could fight such things." Another whispered, "If he speaks true, then humans are not weak, they are nightmares." The human did not smile at their words. He looked into the fire and spoke again. "Your champion was strong. But strength alone is not enough. Humanity has learned this lesson through blood and fire. We fight not because we seek power, but because we must. We survive because we cannot allow ourselves to fall." The hall grew silent. Even the fire seemed to bow to his words. Lady Zyra's pride cracked again. She wanted to laugh, to call him a liar. But her heart knew he was not lying. The scars on his body, the weight in his voice, the calm in his eyes, all of it was proof. She hated it. She hated him. But she could not deny it. Her maids looked at him with something new, no longer fear, but respect. Some of them even looked at him with quiet admiration. They whispered that he was not like the nobles they had known. He did not take what he could. He did not humiliate the weak. He simply carried himself like a storm waiting to rise, and storms could not be ignored. Lady Zyra turned her head away, hiding the war in her heart. Her pride screamed at her to resist. But another voice whispered that this human was more than just a conqueror. He was a weapon forged in endless war. He was a man who had seen death and did not fear it. And for the first time, Lady Zyra wondered if her fate was not just to be his concubine by law, but something else, something far more dangerous. She left the hall in silence, her heart pounding. Behind her, the human sat, quietly, his blade glowing in the firelight. And though he spoke no more, his silence spoke louder than words. New shadows, the human's victory spread across the empire like fire through dry grass. Every noble court, every market, every hidden alley whispered the same story. A human had split Lady Zyra's champion in half with a single strike. The rumor grew larger with every telling. Some said he used forbidden magic. Some said he was a demon in human flesh. But all agreed on one thing: the human was dangerous. In the palace, Lady Zyra felt the change in the air. Her servants bowed to him with fear and respect. Her guards no longer looked at her for orders. They looked at him. Even her maids began to whisper in the night, some with fear, others with quiet wonder. The law had made them his, but his presence had made them loyal. And that truth stung Lady Zyra more than chains. Still, her heart was not blind. She began to notice the shifting shadows in her court. The nobles who had once praised her now met, in secret. Their voices were low, their eyes sharp with hate. They did not only want to see the human fall, they wanted her destroyed as well, because by law, she was tied to him, and if he fell, she would be dragged down with him. One evening, she overheard two of her own advisors whispering in the garden. "He is only one man," one said. "No matter how strong he is, he can be killed. The warlords will rise against him," the other answered. "And when he is gone, Lady Zyra will be nothing but a memory." Her blood turned cold as she listened. She returned to her chamber with heavy steps, her heart torn. Her pride wanted her to remain silent, but something deeper made her speak. She found the human in the training hall. He was sharpening his blade again, his movements calm and patient. "Do you know what they plan?" she asked, her voice tight with fear. "Yes," he said without looking up. "I know." "Then why do you not act?" she demanded, her hands trembling. "Because fear makes them reckless," he answered. "They will come to me, and I will end them." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that shook her chest. Lady Zyra wanted to argue, but part of her knew he was right. The nobles were restless. Their hate would drive them to make mistakes. But mistakes in front of the human meant only death. Her maids whispered among themselves as the tension grew. Some said they should run before the storm broke. Others sharpened small blades in secret, saying they would stand with the human if war came to the palace. Lady Zyra watched this with a strange ache in her heart. Her household had once been hers alone. Now it was bending toward the human, not because of law, but because of silent respect. But shadows grew deeper still. A new name began to echo through the corridors. Warlord Thark. He was stronger, fiercer, and more ruthless than her fallen champion. The nobles had called upon him, feeding his pride, promising him glory if he destroyed the human. And Warlord Thark was not a man who ignored challenges. He would come, and when he came, blood would flow. Lady Zyra sat in her chamber that night, her heart heavy. Her pride told her to let the human fall, to pray for Thark's victory. But another part of her, a part she did not want to name, begged for the human's survival, because if he fell, she would not only lose her life, she would lose something she had not realized she was beginning to need. His presence, his strength, his unshakable calm. She looked into the fire and whispered to herself, "Human, why do I not want you to die?" But the flames gave her no answer, only the silence of the palace, heavy with the promise of war. The turning point. Rena of Valor Prime roared once more. It was larger than life, filled with nobles, soldiers, merchants, and slaves, all had gathered for one reason, to see the human die. The air shook with their chants, their cries for blood. The ancient drums beat like thunder, carrying the sound of war. At the center stood Warlord Thark. He was taller than any soldier, his body wrapped in black steel. His armor was carved with scars from 100 battles. His massive axe was as tall as 3 men, glowing red with the heat of forged fire. His eyes burned like molten stone. He was not just a warrior. He was destruction made flesh. Across from him walked the human, calm as ever, his plain jacket moving lightly in the wind. No armor, no shield, only a blade at his side. He stepped into the dust without fear. The crowd spat curses at him, shouting that his end had come. But he did not answer. He only walked. His eyes locked on Thark. From the edge of the arena, Lady Zyra watched. Her maids stood with her, their hands trembling, their eyes wide. Her pride tried to stay silent, but her heart spoke louder. She whispered to herself, her voice breaking, "Human, do not die." The drums struck louder. The overseer raised his hand. The crowd fell silent. Then, with a single cry, the duel began. Thark charged forward like a storm. Each step shook the ground, dust flying high into the air. His axe came down with the force of a mountain breaking. The sound of metal crushing against stone shook the arena. The ground split where the blade landed, cracks spreading like veins of fire. But the human was not there. He moved faster than sight, his body blurred, his steps silent. The crowd gasped as he appeared behind Thark. His blade gleamed in the sunlight, a streak of silver fire. Blood followed, red and heavy. Thark's armor split, his knees bent for a heartbeat. The warlord's burning eyes widened in disbelief. Then his body fell, crashing into the dust like a broken mountain. Silence. The entire arena froze. No one cheered, no one moved. They had seen it again. The impossible. Lady Zyra's lips parted, her breath trembling. She had prayed he would live. But now that he had won, her heart shook even more. She saw not just a warrior, but something greater. He was a storm, a truth, a force the galaxy could not deny. The crowd erupted, half in terror, half in awe. Some shouted for his death, others shouted his name, but none could escape the truth. The human had defeated Warlord Thark with a single strike. Lady Zyra's maids bowed their heads, not in fear, but in respect. They whispered that he was not just their master by law. He was their master by strength, by fate, by destiny. Even Lady Zyra herself felt her knees weaken. She lowered her head, her voice breaking into words she never thought she would say. "My lord," she whispered, so soft that only she could hear. The human stood in the center of the arena. He did not raise his blade. He did not gloat. He simply stood, silent and calm. But his silence was heavier than 1,000 roars. It told the crowd that he was not done. It told them that this was only the beginning. Lady Zyra stared at him, her heart torn between pride and surrender. She knew her life no longer belonged to herself. It belonged to the human who had broken her champion, her pride, And now, even her fear, her fate was sealed. And though she still hated him, another feeling began to grow, a feeling she could not stop: respect, fear, and something more dangerous: admiration. The drum struck one last time, echoing across the arena. The image of the fallen warlord burned into every eye. And as the dust settled, one truth filled the hearts of all who watched: the age of humans had come, and no empire, no champion, no warlord could stand against it.